How good is James Cook? We're taking a deep dive into that today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. Very excited for our conversation today. I actually got a question from a member of the Locked On Bills subtext community, and I thought it was a really good question that aligned with some of my own thoughts and suspicions, and it inspired me to really research it and flesh out my thoughts and now share those conclusions with you today. And so I'll start by giving you the question that was asked of me, and then we are going to get into the weeds with examining Buffalo Bills running back James Cook. So here's the question. How elite do you think James Cook is? I believe running back is one of the harder offensive positions to evaluate. In regards to 2023, it seems like Cook had good vision and some speed at times. However, it also seemed like he benefited from an offensive line that was healthy all year long and created some big holes for him. I would love your take on what advanced metrics think of the Cook 2023 campaign. It seems like Cook wasn't great after contact, had a big drop rate, and lacked some ability to have explosive runs. Also, Ty Johnson's numbers aren't too far off of Cook's in terms of yards per carry, which makes me think that Cook is more average than we'd like to admit. I know he had a great season, but I'm skeptical of just how elite it was. My thesis is that playing behind a great offensive line and Josh Allen allowed Cook to be better than his actual skill set. Heck of a question, right? This is the type of stuff that provokes thoughts. This is the type of stuff that leads to good research. And I have a lot to share with you today in my efforts to answer this question. So let's break it down. James Cook, 2022 second-round pick, number 63 overall. Just finished his age 24 season. This will be his age 25 season in September. And he's extension eligible after this season. And that's a whole different conversation, right? Paying running backs, projecting them long-term, all of that. We'll try to get into some of that today. But he had a great season in 2023 statistically. 17 games, 55% of the Bills' offensive snaps, 237 carries, 1,122 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's an average of 4.7 yards per carry. Had 44 receptions on 54 targets for 445 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. He was really productive. 6th in the entire NFL in yards from scrimmage, 1,567 yards from scrimmage, 6th most in the NFL. 4th most rushing yards, 8th most receiving yards among running backs, and 10th in total touches, 281 touches. Very productive. And so my objective is to add some context to that, give you some thoughts on his skill set, and then project him moving forward. So some general thoughts on how I perceive James Cook and his skill set, and then the data is going to come, and this picture is going to become pretty complete. I think James Cook's strengths are lateral quickness and elusiveness. I think he's got good wiggle and twitch, and he can work laterally and make aggressive cuts and drive off of his plant foot and get width on jump cuts. He's got very good lateral quickness, elusiveness, agility. Those are great traits to have. Shows up as a route runner, shows up in some of how he works when he gets to the second and third level of the defense, and it lends itself to some explosive runs. That's very good. I think he has very good vision in the hole. This is something that I think has been an area of growth for him across 2 seasons in the NFL is, all right, I'm going to press the line of scrimmage. I'm going to get into a gap. But when I'm in this gap, what am I doing after that? I think he has very good vision in the hole to be able to set up and string together that next move. Great strength to have. I love the durability so far. No real concerns with injuries. Had a major uptick in volume this past season, and he's been available every single week. I think the combination of what he's proven to this point, but also the low mileage on the tires lends itself very favorable to him being an available and durable player for the Buffalo Bills. And I also love the receiving skill set. I know that there's some drops, and we'll talk about those drops, but I've watched a lot of James Cook dating back to Georgia, and his ability to catch the football, run routes, and be an asset in that capacity is pretty obvious. And of course, you're probably thinking a lot about those drops at the end of the season. I am too. But the overall picture of James Cook and all the football that I've watched him play, he's got a great receiving skill set. He had some very unfortunate drops at the end of the season last year. I think those are his clear strengths. Those are great strengths. I like all that stuff. He's got some weaknesses too. One of those being contact balance. And candidly, he's 5'11", 195. It's hard to be super balanced through contact when you have that type of kind of tall, narrow build. He's not a dense frame guy. He's kind of tall and pretty thin. Kind of unusual for a featured running back in the NFL. And so his ability to sustain himself through contact is tricky, due in part to the way he's slapped together. I don't think he's a very good short yardage back. I have not been impressed with him in pass protection. And so when you look at those top 3 weaknesses, contact balance, short yardage, pass protection, I have concerns about how much he can improve upon those 3 things. I don't know that those will ever be strengths because I think a lot of that is just tied to body composition. Ball security has been an issue for James Cook, and I think that includes both drops and fumbles. In terms of fumbles in 2023, he had the second most fumbles among running backs with at least 150 carries. And that 12% drop rate he had last year was second highest among running backs that had over 50 targets. So catch the ball when you get a chance to, especially when you're wide open for a touchdown, and don't fumble. So I think those are areas where I'm looking for him to improve. So the bottom line here is he's a young and durable player that's coming off of a breakout season, and he has a very useful but incomplete skill set. And I think that sets the tone for what we're going to get into next, which is contextualizing 2023 with a bunch of data and then talking about what this looks like moving forward. So be sure to stick with me. Folks, you shouldn't have to worry when you're looking to buy tickets for your next big event. Well, you don't have to because Game Time is here, and it's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets, all-in prices. They give you a view from your seat and a best price guarantee. I mean, simply put, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The app is awesome, super easy to navigate. I love the flash deals. I actually was looking up a concert that's coming in the fall that my wife and I are interested in attending, and we logged in and saw a great flash deal, took it, got a great price on some concert tickets. So check it out. I also love this when you buy a ticket from Game Time. They send it straight to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails to find it. It is super easy. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back, folks. I'm excited now to add some context to the 2023 campaign for James Cook, and we're going to do this with a lot of data, a lot of very useful, meaningful data that tells a story. So let's let's do this. And again, this is going to be a lot of advanced metrics to apply context to the 2023 season and what I'm hoping to see from him moving forward. I talked to my good buddy, Brett Whitefield, who I'm actually going to have on the podcast tomorrow to talk wide receivers in the NFL draft. I want to get some outside opinion on the Bills' need at receiver, what type of receiver they should add, and then just some general thoughts on some of the popular prospects that we perceive could be available to the Buffalo Bills. But Brett is one of the most influential people when it comes to football data and charting. He had a long run with Pro Football Focus, then he went to FTN Data, and he's now the COO of Fantasy Points, and he engineered this incredible data suite that they now have. I encourage you to check it out at fantasypoints.com. And so I reached out to Brett earlier in the week, and I asked him if he could run a data report for me on James Cook, and he did that. And I'm going to share a lot of that with you right now, and I think this is going to provide important information to contextualize James Cook's 2023 campaign. So a lot of numbers here. Encourage you to really kind of focus in and get all of this and allow it to reveal some things about James Cook. So James Cook in 2023 had a 43% stuff rate. And a stuff is like a carry that doesn't result in a certain percentage of yards that you're looking for or conversion. Like it's a good metric. That's 9th lowest in the NFL among running backs with at least 100 carries. That's very good. So not very often was James Cook's runs a failure compared to the rest of the NFL. James Cook had 2.38 yards after contact per attempt. It's 11th lowest in the NFL among running backs with at least 100 carries. 2.38 yards after contact per attempt, 11th lowest. 2.35 yards before contact per attempt, 3rd highest in the NFL. So James Cook has a lot of yards that are blocked for him and very few yards that he gets after he's hit. The data is very clear on that. When it comes to zone runs versus man runs, I think this data is fascinating. On zone concepts, and again, every time I talk about zone and man runs, I get a lot of questions about what they mean. A zone run means that your offensive line is blocking to a zone, and it puts more on the running back to be able to press the line of scrimmage, make one cut, and get up the field. In a man concept, your offensive line isn't blocking a zone, they're blocking a man, and there's a defined track for where the ball is supposed to go. Very different styles of runs. When it comes to zone concepts, James Cook had a 56.3% success rate, 4th highest in the NFL last year. Only 40.5% of carries came in zone, which is the 7th lowest. So a very successful concept for the Bills, but an infrequent concept for the Bills. James Cook is top 10 in yards before contact per attempt in both inside and outside zone runs. So again, telling a very clear story that this offensive line and this scheme created a lot of space for James Cook. He's not getting touched until there's a lot of space available to him. When it comes to man concept, James Cook, 55.3% success rate, 6th best in the NFL. 59.5% of carries came in man concepts, 4th highest in the NFL. So this is the bread and butter for the Bills. They want to run these man concepts, which was very interesting because it was successful. And then you saw late in the season, they started to incorporate a whole lot more zone runs. But in man concepts, James Cook is 2nd in yards before contact per attempt, 3rd in yards after contact per attempt, 3rd in stuff rate, which is really good, 4th in explosive run rate, and 2nd in yards per carry. The Bills and James Cook were very clearly best when they ran man concepts. When it comes to personnel breakdowns, James Cook had 2.46 yards before contact per attempt in 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers, 1 tight end, which is second highest in the NFL with a minimum of 75 carries. So very good in terms of the scheme creating space out of 11 personnel, which I think speaks to the quality of blockers that you got in Khalil Shakir and Gabe Davis. James Cook, 2.23 yards before contact per attempt in 12 personnel, ranks number 1 in the NFL among running backs with a minimum of 50 carries. So this incorporation of 12 personnel created a lot of available space to run the football. Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Quentin Morris also a shot out there. So the Bills, very good scheme, very good blocking out of 11 and 12 personnel, which are your most frequent personnel groupings for the Buffalo Bills. And James had a lot of success while there wasn't a lot of volume when they ran 21 personnel, which is 2 backs, 1 tight end, averaged a lot of yards. So it's becoming very clear, like the style of runs that the Bills have been most successful with or were most successful with in 2023. And the story's becoming quite clear that the blocking and scheme was outstanding when it comes to running the ball. Versus 7+ man boxes, he had the 5th lowest yards after contact per attempt, but had the 3rd highest yards before contact per attempt. So in heavier boxes, 7+ in the box, 5th lowest yards after contact per attempt, 3rd highest yards before contact per attempt. So again, a lot of space being created for him. James Cook not producing much after contact. He only saw 5 carries all season with 5 or less men in the box. Thought that was pretty fascinating. The Bills didn't have a whole lot of super light box looks. And then he did see the second most carries on first or second down with 6 men in the box and had the 3rd highest yards before contact per attempt on those carries. The Bills' run blocking, the Bills' scheme was awesome last year. Awesome. Created a lot of production for James Cook. So those are running the ball metrics. Let's talk about receiving metrics. These are pretty fascinating as well. Only 16.7% of his targets came on designed plays, which is 6th lowest in the NFL among running backs. On designed targets, he had the 8th lowest yards per target among running backs, 4.33 yards per target. So like the manufactured screen throws, like, hey, we're throwing the ball to the running back. That's not where James Cook found a lot of production. Now, he did run 13% of his routes out wide. That's the 4th highest in the NFL among running backs. 9.7% of his routes came from the slot, 9th highest in the NFL. And 77% from the backfield, the 9th lowest in the NFL among running backs that ran at least 200 routes. So the Bills were very creative with where they asked James Cook to run routes, like infrequently out of the backfield relative to running backs in the NFL, but a large percentage of his opportunities in the passing game coming with him lining up in the slot or out wide at receiver. When he was lined up out wide, he has 1.2 yards per route run, ranking 5th in the NFL among running backs with at least 30 routes run from the wide alignment. And then when lined up in the backfield, he had a yards per route run of 1.9, ranking 5th in the NFL among running backs with 175 routes from the backfield. So some really good efficiency metrics, regardless of where James Cook was running routes from. And that's exciting because that versatility is such an asset for this offense. And you even heard Brandon Beane recently talk about the idea of James Cook and Curtis Samuel and how interchangeable they can be. And they can both win as receivers and they can both win taking handoffs. And so I think that puts a lot of stress on defense. And I think you can see that, at least from the James Cook side of things, pretty obvious in the data that I just shared. So hopefully those numbers, courtesy of Fantasy Points, our good buddy Brett Whitefield, gives you some context as to what led to James Cook's success. I'm not taking anything away from James Cook. He was very productive and took full advantage of a great scheme and great blocking. But it's pretty clear that you wish that he had more post-contact production. And you can see pretty clearly that a lot of the production that he had was created for him by the blocking and the scheme. All right, we're going to break this down even further on the other side of it, talk about some volume and just some general thoughts projecting James Cook moving forward. So be sure to stick with me. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use on betting on the tournament, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks. In the lead up to the 2023 season, one of the most fascinating storylines for me, and I talked about it a lot on this podcast, was James Cook taking over as the lead running back after Devin Singletary held that job for 4 seasons. I wondered what the transition would look like. I wondered how much volume James Cook would get. And those answers became pretty clear after the season. The Bills gave James Cook more touches than they ever did Devin Singletary, and they ramped up his volume pretty aggressively. James Cook, when you go back to his touches per season throughout his college and NFL career, it's a massive spike. In 2018 at Georgia, James Cook had 49 touches. 2019 at Georgia, 47 touches. 2020 at Georgia, 61 touches. 2021 at Georgia, his last season, 140 touches. His first season in the NFL, 110 touches. Last season as the Bills' lead running back, 325. That it does include the playoffs. I mean, you are talking about a massive, massive, massive uptick in touches. He had more touches in 2023 than he did in the previous 3 seasons combined. That's a heck of a big jump. That's a huge ramp up. In some ways, I question if it was the right thing. I think it was impressive to see James Cook take such a prominent role in the Bills' offense, but very clearly it wore him down. Very clearly. Weeks 1 through 15, James Cook had 5.1 yards per carry, 2.97 yards after contact per attempt. Week 16 through the divisional round, so the last 5 games, yards per carry went down to 3.5. Yards after contact per attempt went down to 2.01. So 1.6 yards per carry less over the last 5 games, and basically a full yard less after contact per attempt. He slowed down those last 5 games, last 3 regular season games, the 2 playoff games. I think part of that is that teams really started to game plan for him. Those last 5 games were the 5 games after the Dallas game, which was an absolute monster performance for James Cook. One of the most productive games of any running back in the NFL last season. And so I think teams learn pretty quickly that you have to game plan for this guy or he's going to be productive. And those last 5 games, I think you saw more game planning for him, but I also think that he wore down. He got what was blocked for him and not a lot more, which was kind of a theme throughout the entire season, but especially the last 5 games. Also, that's when the drops really became an issue. 3 of his 7 drops in 2023 came in the last 4 games. So, yeah, I think there's pretty clear evidence here that he did wear down. And you wonder, was 325 carries the right plan for James Cook in 2023? More than he had the previous 3 seasons combined? I have some questions about how that workload was managed. So what are my conclusions? We just gave a bunch of data. I talked about the skill set. I have 5 different conclusions. Number 1 is that James Cook is a good player, but clearly benefited from great scheme and blocking. And running back is the position in the NFL that is most reliant on the rest of the unit. The blocking has to be good. Running backs can elevate the blocking a little bit, but not like other positions can elevate, right? Like running back is contingent the most on the rest of the unit. So number one, James Cook is a good player, but clearly benefited from great scheme and blocking. Number two is that James Cook should be better positioned in 2024 to maximize his opportunities. He's no longer a first-year starter, and he understands the volume expected. This is his backfield. Right now, the Bills' backup running back is Ty Johnson, and that's it. This is his, very clear that he's the lead back. Very clear that, assuming he's healthy, another 300-plus touches are coming his way. And so not only should he be positioned better to take advantage of that, but now he's done it. He knows what it's like to touch the ball 320-plus times across more than that, 19 games last year. So I think that can impact the way that he trains and prepares for a season. Number three is that there's very clearly meat on the bone when it comes to receiving production. The guy dropped 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games of the season? But also, we talked about those efficiency metrics and the yards per route run and the versatility and how he can produce as a receiver. And I'm excited to see how that upticks. Number 4 is that the Bills will always need complementary players to make up for what's missing in James Cook's skill set. I don't think he's ever going to be great in terms of contact balance. I don't know that he's ever going to be awesome at pass protection. I don't know that he's ever going to be a preferred choice when it comes to short yardage. And so, you talk about lead running backs in the NFL, and certainly when you talk about paying lead running backs in the NFL, you're looking for very complete players. James Cook has got a very attractive skill set, but it's certainly missing some stuff. And then number 5, I think that 2024 is going to provide us with the clarity to tell us what he's fully capable of in the NFL. Given the space that's been afforded to him, I want to see more yards after contact. I want to see more missed tackles forced. I want to see more explosive runs. And I'm totally mindful of this being a young player that just had his first season as a starter in the NFL. And, I'm excited for what's to come, but I also think that there's important context for us to be mindful of as we consider the production that existed in 2023 and start to think about what it looks like in 2024 and beyond. And so I love having the production that James Cook had. But as we consider the long term and how James Cook fits into this, and if he's a guy that is going to be a catalyst for this offense and what that means and what that looks like, I think there's a lot to be mindful of there. And hopefully this podcast was helpful for you in understanding and determining how good James Cook really is. I think we have a lot to learn. But I think I take a lot of comfort in knowing that this scheme and this run blocking is really good. Now, there's obviously changes. The Bills made some major shifts when it comes to their center and left guard situation. Hopefully that's all for the betterment of the really good scheme and blocking being even better moving forward. All right, folks, this was fun. Love doing these deep dives. We'll do more deep dives for other players on the roster. I thought James Cook was a great place to start, and really a big shout out to the member of our Locked On Bills subtext community that asked this question that sparked this conversation. Very excited to talk to Brett Whitefield tomorrow on the show to get some outside opinion on the need at receiver and, kind of debate some of these guys and how we see them. And I know that, Brett studies tape. He's probably watched more football than anybody I know since I've known him. It's just an unbelievable amount of film study that he does, and very excited to get his takes and for you to hear them tomorrow on the show. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.